Let's make another Christmas soap. And this is a brand new soap I've never made before, and I'm using a brand new set of soap scrapers. So I'm mixing up my oils for my first batch, and I'm trying to make the background blue. As you can see, I'm actually putting a lot of blue colorant in the soap, but for some reason I can't get it to be anything but gray, so we're going with gray. So I am now pouring this soap into my mold, and this one took quite a while to set up before I was able to start scraping it. Because there's no fragrance in the top part of the soap, I am putting a fragrance in the bottom part, but in this part, I'm not putting a fragrance. Once my soap had set up, I am finally able to start my first scrape. And then I'm pouring my excess that I'm scraping out of this soap into another mold. And with soap scrapers, you sometimes have to keep putting the soap back into the mold and then re-scraping over and over and over. Next, I am mixing up a small batch of black soap, and I'm using activated charcoal powder to turn this part black. And all of the black parts of this soap is scented in frankincense and myrrh. I couldn't put the frankincense and myrrh fragrance in the other parts of the soap because this fragrance is known for turning soap dark brown, and I didn't want it to turn my soap brown, so I'm only using it in the black parts of the soap. And then I'm pouring this black soap into those grooves in my soap mold. And then I have to let it set up for a while before I can go on to the next step. After the black soap had set up, I am now scraping a second design in this soap. Next, I have to make another one of those gray batches of soap to go into the black groove that I just scraped out. And it's very difficult, but I'm trying to match up the exact same shade of gray that I had the first time. And then I'm pouring this gray batter into that tiny little groove. And then after that had set up, I'm scraping again, and it's creating another groove. Now this next groove is super, super thin, and I had to make a very tiny amount of soap, and it had to be the gray again. And I tried to match up the same gray, but it ended up being a lot lighter, which you'll notice in the final bar. But I was thoroughly confused at this point because I kept wondering why I had all these little grooves that I had to keep going over and over. I was just really confused, but I rolled with it, and I had to fill in this tiny little strip of, you can barely even see it, that tiny black line. It was so thin, I wasn't even sure if any of my soap was going in that groove. And then when the gray soap had set up, I am scraping again. And the final batch is going to be a black soap, and this is going to cover the remaining part of the soap. So I'm making another batch of black soap with my activated charcoal powder. And then I'm pouring this black soap over the entire remaining part of the mold. And then I'm scraping the very top of the soap to make it completely flat. Next day, it's time to unmold. And as I was making the soap, I was making a second batch as well. And when I made the first batch on camera, what you didn't see is I was making a second batch, and I added a little bit more of that blue colorant, really trying to get that blue color, but it ended up just being a darker gray. So the first batch that you saw was a lighter gray. The second batch I made was a darker gray. And then it's time to cut this soap into bars. Do you have any idea of what the theme is for this soap? Because these are my Mary and Joseph soap bars. And all of those tiny little grooves that were throwing me off were those little pockets underneath the donkey. And the final step is to stamp on the front of my soap bars. And the Star of Wonder just finishes off these soaps. I know these soaps aren't absolutely perfect, but this was my first time using this soap scraper, and I do love how these turned out. These are headed to my curing racks for the next 4 weeks, but they will be available for pre-order in my next release, which is October 20th, and these will begin shipping the week of November 19th. Thank you so much for watching.